Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. Dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like it, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, this week I have a real treat for you. It is my pleasure to welcome to Hiker Trash Radio adventure filmmaker, world traveler, hiker, stunt woman, and host of Alice's Adventures on Earth, Alice Ford. How's it going, Alice?
Hey, it's going good. I'm glad to be inside for the time being, and happy to be here. Happy to chat with everyone.
Nice. Let's clarify that a little bit, because we have a little bit of a delayed start to the interview this evening because something happened to you. What's going on?
Yeah, today was it was an interesting day. I actually have spent the last 8 days in Moab, visiting various national parks, driving some like pretty serious off-road trails in my Jeep, and just arrived into Salt Lake City. And I had like 2 hours to spare before we were going to chat. I pulled into the Marriott Hotel, which is where I thought I was staying, parked in the parking garage, got out, heard air. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? That my tire is going flat. So went to check in, was like, I'll deal with it after the interview. Turns out I was at the wrong hotel. So that started things off well. Ended up pulling my car up to the valet and was going to have the valet guy kind of help me. I have really big rims and really big tires on my Jeep. And so it's kind of like too heavy for me to deal with myself. So got the tire off, went to jack up the car. Turns out the jack I have is also not tall enough to jack up my car.
You got to the full extension of the jack, and the Jeep had not moved.
Oh, full extension of the jack, and it barely touched the underside of my car. So luckily, I have roadside assistance, which I had never used in my life. Also, I've had this Jeep for 10 years and never had to change a tire because I had just got new tires actually, and I had off-road tires on before, and I just kind of like went to more of an off-road / highway tire. So they're not as rugged and apparently more prone to getting holes in them because my old tires had like 10 pieces of rebar each and like never lost any air. So anyways, the guy came and then we had a whole saga too. Like one of the lug nuts was stripped. So I still am not even out of the woods tomorrow. I need to go find a tire shop because we couldn't, like, basically one of the lug nuts now is stuck in the tire or stuck in the wheel and not completely screwed in.
Holy smokes.
Just made it to the hotel. We're a little late, but I'm here and I'm excited to chat with you.
Now, did you pull up to the Marriott and you had a reservation at the Hilton? Or how did that work? Well,
it was a different Marriott. So there's apparently
two Marriotts.
Two Marriotts in downtown Salt Lake City.
How far apart?
0.3 miles, literally 3 blocks.
Two Marriotts within 0.3 miles. That's good planning, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and one's called City Center, and I think the other one's called City Creek or something. So it's like they said, oh, you're the 6th person today that thought they were staying at this hotel, and they're at the other one.
Hey, Marriott, if 6 people are showing up, I mean, that might be an indicator that too many hotels in the same area. Spread out.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Now, it was a huge piece of steel in the tire. Is that what you said?
Yeah, a really big piece of steel. So I don't know what I ran over. I mean, luckily it happened here in the city. I mean, as I said, like the last week I've been on all these really serious off-road trails, and I'm just really glad that this happened when I was in civilization and not like 90 miles down a dirt road with no reception to find out that my jack wasn't tall enough. I'm glad it was here and not out there.
I like that. You found the silver lining in the whole experience. That's great, Alice.
Always. Isn't that I think the motto of backpacking?
It is. It should be. It should be. Now, I have to ask a follow-up question. If there's this huge piece of steel sticking out of your tire and you don't know where it happened, what does that say about your driving skills and your observation ability? That's a little worrisome.
Well, I mean, I think it happened like probably when I got downtown, because I drove 4 hours from Moab today. And if it had happened, earlier, I would have had a flat tire, and it's like just losing air now. So it must have happened like right when I pulled into downtown Salt Lake City.
But you didn't feel anything, didn't see anything.
I mean, driving my Jeep is like driving a what can I attune it to? It's like, well, it's more like driving an ATV. It's very bumpy. I mean, you could run over a school bus full of children. You would just be like, did I just hit something?
All right. Hey, if you see Alice Ford in your town, watch out. Watch out. Stay a little bit further back from the edge of the curb than you normally would. All right. Well, hey, you are here, and I know you were probably telling the people at the hotel and the guy that was helping you, I've got Doc waiting for me. He is waiting. We need to hurry this up so I can get onto the show.
I sure did.
All right. Hey, Alice, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
Yeah, I have listened before.
Okay, so you know what's in store for you.
Yes.
We do have a segment towards the end that I like to remind people about. It's called the hiking hack. And that is where I will turn to you to ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
I won't.
Okay. And I know you spent quite a bit of time on the trails. Have you picked up a trail name along the way?
You know what? I haven't picked up a trail name, but I have had a lot of people on my YouTube channel like ask or say that I need to have a trail name, but no one has given me one quite yet. But I mean, I think, I solo backpack and solo hike, so I don't always or necessarily come across a lot of people when I'm hiking or backpacking, when I'm on these trails. So I think that's why I don't have a name yet.
That makes sense. Nobody out there to give you one. Maybe we can find one for you here on the podcast tonight.
I hope so.
Maybe something related to your driving skills.
Well, my Jeep's name is Mad Max.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Maybe something post-apocalyptic then.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
All right, Alice, it's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you've got to have it out there. And this could be any type of item. It could be gear, apparel, a luxury item, maybe a taller jack. I don't know. So Alice, what is that item in your toolkit?
I mean, it's hard to pick one, but I think for me, a sleeping bag liner is really important because I get really cold sleeping, and I'm also just I mean, it's hard sleeping in a tent. It's hard to be comfortable, and I don't know, the material of sleeping bags is like, it makes me, even if I'm freezing to death, sweat, and then I get colder, but then I'm wet. And it's just terrible. So a sleeping bag liner for me has been like a total game changer for me to be like more comfortable and also warmer in my top quilt or my sleeping bag, whatever I'm using. So it's kind of a must have.
So it stops the sweating. It keeps you a little bit warmer. It also keeps the sleeping bag cleaner or the quilt cleaner, totally. Right? So that that extends the life of that item as well.
It sure does. Yeah. And it's great even for like when you're traveling and not even hiking or backpacking, if you're maybe staying at a mountain hut or a hostel or, somewhere that's just cheap.
A Marriott.
In my car, who knows?
Yeah, in your car, in Mad Max. That's right. Okay. Well, hey, let's keep talking about gear with...
It's the hiking pole.
The hiking pole, and that's pole with 2 L's, like a survey, not like the thing you hold in your hand out there. And as you know, if you're a regular listener, I love to explain that to my guests each time because I think I'm pretty clever coming up with that. And my guest reaction is pretty much the same as yours. And you're just kind of a blank stare, okay. But this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale, with 1 being completely insane and 100 being completely sane. Now, I have to tell you that anybody who has run over a big piece of steel and punctured their tire and not realized it for a while, it's an automatic 20-point deduction there. So your top possible score tonight is 80.
Great.
Okay. Now I've got 3.
Underdog.
Okay, I've got 3 sets of questions. 2 of them are related to hiking. 1 is related to just kind of the big issues facing the world today. You have a preference, A, B, or C?
No, go for it. Whatever you want.
Whatever we want. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's go with the 3rd set of questions. These are related to hiking. Okay. And so I know you spend a lot of time alone out there. You're a solo hiker, but when you do encounter somebody else and you hike with them for a while, question number 1 is, what are the top 3 topics of conversation on the trail?
Usually if I've spilled what I do for a living, it's stunts and movies, because people are usually really interested in finding out about that. I would say the other thing would be kind of like trail conditions, if there was any wildlife sightings, and then future hikes people are doing, I think, is something I talk about a lot with people I run into, like what other big summits or big trails they're planning on doing in the next year.
Okay, I'm taking notes. This is not rapid fire. You did it perfectly. There, you give the answer and you give some explanation as to, why you gave that answer. That helps me figure out, what your score is going to be. Mm-hmm. Okay, question number 2. What is the best trail name you've encountered out there? You obviously don't have one, but have you encountered any unique, interesting, funny trail names out there?
I actually don't know that I've ever asked anyone if they have a trail name.
You don't introduce yourself?
Yeah, but I'm saying like, like I've met like probably like a Johnny and Eddie. Like, I guess like I've never met any like weird, like no one's ever introduced me with their like quote unquote trail name outside of just like a regular name.
You've missed out. There's nothing like running into somebody on the trail and saying, "Hey, I'm Doc," and they reach out and say, "Hey, I'm Cheesebeard," or I'm Poop Hands. And if you're shaking hands with Poop Hands as he says his name, that's problematic.
Well, I'm going to look forward to this in the future, and I'm going to now go out of my way to ask people if they have a trail name, not a regular name. So. Okay.
So what I'm going to do, because you have not encountered any trail names out there, I'm going to pull a question out of set B to supplement. Okay. So let's see. Question number 2, pulling from set B. Do you roll your toilet paper over or under? At home, not on the trail.
Oh.
She seems perplexed.
I think I fold it.
No. When it's hanging on the roll.
Oh.
Is it hanging over or is it
hanging over? Yeah, it's hanging over.
Yeah. Do you feel strong about that?
Yeah.
It has to be that way.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I don't know, but that's just the way it is. That's like how they do it at the hotels.
That's how they do it at the Marriotts.
It feels wrong the other way. It backwards.
Does. It's tough to find where the roll ends and starts when it's hanging the other way.
Exactly. And then I feel like it also, you get that like it just kind of like unrolls by itself and it gets all over the floor if it's upside down.
That is called a poltergeist. All right. Back to the poll. Question number 3. Since we're talking about toilet paper, question number 3 actually deals with that. When you're out on the trail now, toilet paper, bidet, leaves, snow, or something else?
I guess it depends. Usually, like, nothing. If I'm just like, if I have to pee, I just drip dry. Not to be like TMI. And then I would say most of the trails I've ever done have had like, some sort of bathroom scenario along the trail somewhere. So toilet paper or like wet wipes.
Okay. Now, Alice, I don't want you to think that this is, a weird show. We usually don't have 2 questions on toilet paper in the hiking poll. It just worked out that way because you didn't encounter a trail name. So, all right, onward and upward. Question number 4. When you're on trail, is it breakfast in camp, breakfast on trail, or no breakfast?
Breakfast at camp.
And what's your go-to breakfast?
Usually like oatmeal, or I'll bring muesli and like some dried fruit, and then I'll just heat up water and make like basically like an oatmeal, but slightly different.
Okay, so you're using your stove first thing in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends how many nights I'm out. If I'm just doing an overnight, sometimes I will just bring like a granola bar for breakfast. But if I'm doing like multiple days, like when I did West Coast Trail earlier this year, yeah, I'm using my stove first thing in the morning. Also, I'm a coffee drinker, so you gotta have that. So I'm using my stove first thing in the morning. Either way, the only time I'm not using my stove is if it's just an overnight and I've brought like a thermos with coffee that I made the day before, and I'm just wanting to be like really quick about it, and I'll just drink the coffee that's hopefully still hot the next morning.
Okay. Question number 5. I already know the answer to this question, but it's one of the questions I have to ask it. Solo hiking or tramley?
Solo.
Yes. And why do you prefer solo hiking?
I think I just love being outside in the woods by myself, but I think also like I love to have my own pace, and I'm very just like self-sufficient, and it's hard to find people to go hiking with you. It's even harder to find people to go backpacking with you. So yeah, if I want to go, I just go. I don't want to like be held down by somebody else's, pace, or even just like, I guess maybe I get annoyed easily. I don't know.
Yeah. Most of our friends and family, they probably score a little bit higher on the hiking pole than us. So got it. All right. Rank the following according to your preference. 1 mile severe uphill, 1 mile severe downhill, or a 20-mile road walk. Rank those in order.
Of what I like or dislike?
Yeah, most preferred to least preferred.
Okay, wait, tell me again.
Yes.
1 mile uphill, 1 mile downhill? Okay.
Severe.
Okay. I would say 20-mile road walk would probably be the worst. And then 1 mile uphill, 1 mile downhill.
Okay, so your most preferred would be 1 mile downhill.
Yeah.
Severe downhill. Your knees are okay? They can take that? Okay. Do you use poles
or I
out
just
there?
fall down, just roll.
Use gravity to your advantage. That's right. Do you use hiking poles?
Only if I'm doing, if I'm backpacking, yes. And then if I'm doing something really, really steep, then yeah. I'm uphill, I'm saying. Downhill, I usually just kind of will run, or sometimes I'll use one pole. I also usually have like a tripod and all this other junk that I carry with me. So, but if my backpack's really heavy, I do like a trekking pole.
Okay. Question number 7, last question in the poll, and then we're going to calculate your score. What's on your head out there? Ball cap, floppy hat, straw hat, sun hoodie, or no hat, or something else?
A sun visor.
Sun visor.
Yeah, it's within reach. I'll show it to you.
Okay, this is show and tell. Oh yeah, that is
This is pretty
that's
much my
why
go-to
that is wide
everywhere.
brim. Yeah, that's like a hat that we'd see at the Kentucky Derby,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, during the Derby, I actually put flowers on the side.
Uh-huh. And you got your mint julep? I see.
That's right.
All right. Hey, stand by. I need to do a little math here, which means I have to take my shoes off. We're going to use all 20 digits. And I've got to, I got to carry the 2. We're going to divide by pi. I'm going to multiply by root 5. And we're going to make a slight adjustment for the diameter of the tires on Mad Max. And I come up with a score of 59. 59. Well, how do you feel about that?
So slightly insane.
So yeah, I mean, the closer to 1, the closer you are to insanity. So this is just north of the midway point.
Okay, so only a little crazy. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that.
That's right. Okay. Now, before we get too far down the trail, Alice, let's back up a little bit. We'd love to hear about your background, where you grew up. Do you have any siblings that have become also enamored with the outdoor adventure life? And how did you get involved in outdoor adventure?
Yeah, sure. I'll start from the beginning. So I actually grew up in New Hampshire. My family and I lived in a very small town. We had a lot of acreage of forest, river, wetlands, kind of a little bit of everything on our property. And so, and I have an older sister as well. We lived right by a lake as well. So we spent most of our time outdoors. My parents were really avid hikers. My dad especially was a mountaineer and a ski patrolman for a little while as well. So we just grew up in a really like outdoor centric family. Summers were like always on the lake or in the mountains of the White Mountains. And we did like national parks for vacations usually, or other kind of like nature, outdoor adventure type stuff, skiing or, just exploring things like that. I did a bunch of sports as well, gymnastics, track and field, ski team. And then later in college was also on the diving team. So I just grew up in a family that just really loved the outdoors. My dad was also a big conservationist and a big forester. So he really instilled his love for conserving like woodlands and wildlife in my sister and I as well. Now she's very big into the outdoors too. She likes to hike and stuff, but I think she took a very long hiatus from that. She's got a son, and so she's not as hell-bent about it as me, but she's kind of like come back to hiking and backpacking more recently. So that's kind of interesting. But so I went to college in Vermont and then actually went to 2 years in Vermont, 2 years in Arizona. I've moved all over the country. But then I got into stunts, being a stunt woman about 12 years ago. And around the same time was really interested in having my own travel show. So started kind of putting some ideas into the world on that, I will say, and had done a lot of like little TV hosting jobs and stuff like that in college, but always just really wanted to share my love for nature and the outdoors with more people on TV. So long story short, I started YouTube like a decade ago and started with a series called World Heritage Adventures, which was all about exploring some of these protected areas in the world. That evolved into doing more national parks and now more hiking and backpacking. So they're all kind of intertwined in there, but I've always just had a really big love and admiration for our outdoor spaces, our protected areas, and showcasing that to more people, but also showing it in a way where they grow to love and respect wildlife in a way that they may not have before.
Okay. Hey, we covered a lot of ground right there, and I've got some follow-up questions to ask you. So Dad was a mountaineer. And
yeah,
so
he was he was a rock climber. He did some free climbing. He spent a lot of time out in Colorado and kind of the western states, Utah, the Dakotas, lived in a teepee for a while in the 60s, and then was also a really big ski patrolman and cut a lot of trails like Aspen Highlands in Colorado, helped build some of the bowls on that mountain, and also was like a whitewater rafting guide in the Grand Canyon for a couple summers. So this was all like before I was born. But yeah, so, I mean, he instilled, I mean, I feel like every month we had like a slideshow in our living room of like all of his old photos from like the days of like free climbing this and rafting that and that kind of stuff. So
that's amazing. What a fantastic childhood. Have a dad like that with that kind of history, and then also be growing up in New Hampshire with everything just outside your back door, all of that, you know, those natural resources available to you. That's just great. Now, you said that you were in high school, you were on the ski team?
yeah, only for a little bit because I played too many other sports, and my principal actually, I was just telling my mom about this. So I did gymnastics, I did track and field. I started the cheerleading team at our high school, and then I joined the ski team. I was a really good skier. I've been skiing since I'm like 3 years old. And my principal, after like the first ski meet, was like, "You do too many sports. You're not allowed to continue doing the ski team." And I was like, "Excuse me."
That's a bad principle right there.
Yeah, so people have been trying to tell me to do less, I feel like, my whole life. And I'm always like, no.
Do not listen to them, Alice. Do not listen to them. And I'm always a little bit tickled that teams, high school sports, have ski teams in certain areas of the country. I live in Southern California. We don't have a ski team. You know, I was a high school principal. We didn't have a ski team. And I know that some of the schools further south and by the ocean in Southern California, they have surf teams, which is cool. It's just also pretty cool. So that's great that, you know, depending on where they are geographically, they can have opportunities like that for kids.
Yeah. And I will say too, like we had a really unique elementary school. Our elementary school actually had a ski program. And so every Tuesday, in the wintertime, kids had to choose. You either had to do cross country or downhill skiing, or you had to do a gym day. And so the whole school, I think it was second grade and up, got out at noon, and they would either bus you to the ski area, or you would go cross country with like our cross country coach out in the backwoods behind the school, or the alternate option, which was only like 3 kids, would stay and do like arts and crafts.
And which one did you choose?
So my parents usually made me alternate. So I would do like downhill, and then the next year I would do cross country, and vice versa.
See that? You're well-rounded. I mean, that's why you're doing so many sports in high school.
Yeah.
Now, you went to college in Vermont and Arizona. What did you major in? Did you major in stuntwomaning?
No,
you major in the outdoors?
Was my major in stuntwomaning.
Yeah.
No, I actually changed my major a bunch of times. I went in originally for business thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. That'll be good. But it's really boring. And honestly, all you study is like economics and accounting, which, well, very not interesting. No offense to anyone that got a business major. I just, I think there's much more interesting things to study.
Well, there go all of our accountants who are listeners. They have tuned out right now.
Sorry, guys. So at one point I was like a nutrition major, and then I was a community development major, which I actually really liked, which is basically the study of helping third world countries kind of develop sustainable initiatives for farming and resource management. And I would have stuck with that major, but I transferred to University of Arizona, and they didn't have anything like that. They only had generic majors. So I ended up graduating with a degree in public administration and sociology.
Okay. What does a public administrator do?
So basically, like anyone that works at like a government agency, like the health department, or someone that would work on figuring out how to save Medicare, so it's basically like people that work in the government is public administration.
Got it. All right. And how did you find yourself entering the world of stunts?
Well, It kind of all ties back into entertainment, TV hosting, movies. I started working as an extra. So I've lived in a lot of places. At one point, I was living in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I was working as an extra. And I was also still pole vaulting and trying to qualify for the Olympic trials in that. And so my life basically consisted of training and then like bartending and then working as an extra on different movies and commercials and things like that. And I ended up taking a job where I was at an event and there was a lot of stuntmen because it was a G.I. Joe, this like event for the G.I. Joe movie that they were filming. And I met a bunch of stuntmen and they were like, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a stunt woman. I had a friend at the time that told me I should try it and that I would be really good at it. So I started training with them. And then a couple months later, I was actually working a job in Italy for something totally random and met someone that had worked on a TV show in LA as a gymnast on a TV show. And I was like, I can still tumble. And he was like, if they come back for another season, I'd be happy to like send your information and then you take it from there. And he came through and I sent in a tape and I got on this show, Make It or Break It, which was filming in Los Angeles, and moved to LA.
All right. Now, did you had the right background to become a stunt woman? You were good at falling and
so a lot
tumbling and doing crazy stuff?
Yeah. So the best background for stunts is definitely like gymnastics or circus or dance or martial arts. So because I had already a lot of that background and I already knew how to fall, and pole vaulting, obviously, like you're falling from very high. That's a really easy transition to just learn a little bit more of like martial arts and film fighting and things like that. And practicing some of these other disciplines that you need to know in stunts, like reacting to other people and things of that nature.
Interesting. Now, I know the schools in the Northeast have ski teams. We've got surf teams down here. Do you think some schools have circus teams? You said
No,
if you're good in circus.
Yeah, because Cirque du Soleil. So there's a lot of people in the stunt business that have come from professionally being in Cirque du Soleil, like in a lot of the Las Vegas shows and things like that. So a lot of people did that before they got into stunts and movies.
Makes sense. Now, what kinds of films or TV series have you been involved in as a stunt woman?
Spider-Man, Transformers 4 and 5, Star Trek, Red Notice, Quantum Leap, the TV show, a lot of stuff. I've been in like over 100 titles.
And what is your specialty when it comes to stunts?
Definitely like wire work, falling, gymnastics-y type flips and body movement type things.
What is the most outrageous stunt you've ever been a part of and where you thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here?
I feel like there's one of those on every movie. No. Outrageous. Hard to say. I mean, I think probably driving stuff is probably the most outrageous, like just rally racing type stuff where you're actually going at really high speeds and driving through narrow openings and, or crashing on purpose.
Now, I know Tom Cruise has gotten a lot of publicity for doing his own stunts, and some of them very outrageous. I think there's the big motorcycle jump in one of his most recent films. I know he broke his ankle jumping on a train, other types of stuff. Have you ever been injured doing a stunt?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've had staples in my head. I've had stitches. I've had this collarbone disconnected. So yeah.
Okay. Any future projects coming up?
Actually, we're on strike right now, so
that's right.
No one should be watching any sort of television. No, no, but the whole union is on strike right now, unfortunately. So no one is working right now, and it doesn't look like we're going to have an agreement with the studios for several more months.
Yeah, stop watching TV out there, everybody, and listen to podcasts, especially Hiker Trash Radio.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about your YouTube channel. I mentioned that you're an adventure filmmaker. I want to hear a little bit about that, and we want to hear about some adventures out there on the trail. So, listeners, stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Now, welcome back. We're talking to Alice Ford with no trail name yet, but I'm trying to think of a good driving trail name. I'll come up with something, I'm pretty sure. When we left, we heard about all of your exploits as a stunt woman. Tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel and also this reference to adventure filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had a YouTube channel for probably close to a decade now, maybe little more actually. I make films about hiking, backpacking, national parks, indigenous cultures, on really just beautiful wild places where I'm learning about culture and wildlife. And I do all the filming and 90% of the editing and producing of all of that as well. And the majority of those experiences are solo. So it's just all about kind of like female empowerment and getting to learn about new people, new places. I really love exploring indigenous cultures and have done some really cool experiences with the Sami in Norway and with the Achuar in the Amazon, and definitely have more of that planned in the future. And so I do all the filming of all of that myself as well. So definitely that's where the adventure filmmaker comes. And yeah, you guys can check me out on YouTube if you want at Alice Ford Adventures. I have a new video every week from different places around the world and have done a lot of cool hiking trails from here in the US to Canada to Europe and Africa. So, and I always have a pushing the limits on what's next too.
Nice. We love it when people push the limits. Now, if anybody spends a decent amount of time, going through your YouTube channel, sounds like you want them to walk away with a better understanding of maybe the indigenous cultures from different areas. And then also you mentioned female empowerment. What are the takeaways you want people to have when they watch your stuff?
Yeah, I think I definitely want people to come away with thinking that they can push themselves a little bit farther than maybe they think, that especially for women, that they can do things by themselves, that they are capable, that they can be self-sufficient, that they don't necessarily need a friend or a man to go with them to be able to go and experience a new place or hike or backpack or travel either, especially travel to more wild places, more remote places where you might be, I do a lot of homestays and I've done a lot of, as I've said, indigenous travel and spent a lot of time just trying to embed myself more in other places rather than just kind of, go to a nice hotel and a nice restaurant or, learn a little bit more about the place. And so I want people to come away maybe having a little bit more confidence in themselves and go out and try something new. But also I want people to be inspired to learn more and to educate themselves more on people and places and wildlife and the ecosystem and how it's all connected and not just kind of surface level travel.
Now, we have a whole lot of different people listening to this podcast. We've got people who are just day hikers. We've got people who are, they've done triple calendar year, triple crowns. We've got, men listening to this. We've got women listening to this. What advice would you give to someone who's listening, who is a woman who is at this point, just done some day hikes and is thinking about doing something bigger, but has, some doubts, some concerns? What kind of advice in terms of preparation and things to be aware of would you give that person?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say, like, I've been that woman too. Like, it was only a few years ago that I did my first solo camp out. I haven't been doing it my whole life, even though I grew up in a very wild place. I was usually with a friend or my family when I was camping or hiking. And so I discovered kind of this solo experience in my adult years too. And I think the best way to kind of get into it is just to take baby steps. You know, my first solo camping experience, I found some BLM land where I knew there wouldn't be anyone else really. I was able to park right at my campsite with my tent right next to my car, had the car parked, you know, with the front facing out in case I needed to leave quickly. And I just made sure that I had all of my like safety things in check. I had told a friend I wanted to be really comfortable. I brought, you know, dinner, and I just made it easy as well. So I didn't decide like, okay, my first time ever solo camping or backpacking, I'm going to like do some crazy thing and be out in the middle of the woods. And I also picked an area that was really open. And so I think it's just important to make it easy for yourself to feel comfortable in the uncomfortability of it. Don't make it too hard. And if you're a little bit apprehensive or scared of certain things, like don't do too many scary things at once, just baby steps.
I love that. I love that because hiking and backpacking, there are so many different entry points. I mean, you can do the day hike, like you said, and then there's these crazy long trails that go from Mexico to Canada. And it is rare for somebody to say, you know what, I'd like to do some hiking, and my first trip is going to be, 2,200 miles or 2,600 miles. I have talked to a couple of people who have done that, and they are some different people. But there are so many entry points into hiking, and I think you're exactly right. If you're just getting started, do not necessarily take a huge jump. Do something that's more of an entry-level trail for you, not just outside your comfort zone. And then you get used to that, and you can then go to the next level and the next level and the next level and take it as far as you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like, for me personally, there's something about like when we talk about campsites, like somewhere that's completely forested is a little bit scarier to me than like, say, a desert campsite where you can see everything. So my first camp out that I did by myself, I chose a desert spot because I was like, cool, I can see everything. I'm not like in the middle of the woods. There's going to be less noises that you hear at night too. I mean, obviously I heard mice, but there's going to be less wind and sticks breaking and things like that. And so that comforted me a little bit, which I think, anything that you can do to comfort yourself a little bit is a good thing when you're just getting started, especially camping or backpacking.
Agreed. But as you expand your horizons, there is more exposure to being uncomfortable. And I think you mentioned that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's part of the experience.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even day hiking, there's a lot of trails that are really tough, and it is a suffer fest for sure. But you get to where you're going, or maybe even sometimes you don't, and you have to just see the silver lining in the experience that you're having, even when sometimes the experience in the moment seems really rough.
Now let's talk about an entry-level trail, which you've done recently. I've done a few times as well, the Trans-Catalina Trail.
Yeah, I did the Trans-Catalina earlier this year. In June, I did the West Coast Trail. And so I did the Trans-Catalina Trail in April as kind of my warm-up trail for the West Coast Trail. And it's, for those of you that don't know about the Trans-Catalina Trail, it is on Catalina Island off the coast of basically the Los Angeles area, Southern California. You take a ferry to get there, and it takes most people 3 to 4 days to do the whole trail. It's, I think, 38 miles.
Yep.
around there. There's bison on the island. And I would say it's like a luxury backpacking experience because you have a restaurant on day 2 that you can go to for breakfast or lunch, depending on your timing. There's also then another town, the next night after that night that you can stop in and eat. So it's pretty luxurious. And also all the campsites, they'll deliver firewood so you can have a campfire. But it was really fun. Honestly, it was kind of the first time I met some people on the trail that then we like shared a campfire every night. And we kind of like picked up these 2 teenage boys at one point that their dad had kind of like a medical problem. So they were hiking with one of their dads and he kind of was like, I got to get off the trail. And so there were these like 2 17-year-old boys. And so we were like, oh, you can come and have your fire with us. And so it was nice. There was a lot of like camaraderie on the trail, which I hadn't really experienced in my other like solo trips before. So a lot of fun. And then, the day the bison were on the trail, there was a couple of us together. So that was a fun experience to watch everyone kind of go their separate ways all of a sudden. I'm going this way. Well, I'm going that way. Oh, but yeah, it's a really fun trail. Definitely some steep sections in there, but just spectacular scenery. And I really lucked out going in April because the marine layer every day was pretty much over the island. So it wasn't too hot. And that made the scenery really spectacular. That you get to camp on the beach at one point. So it was really fun.
Sounds like you had the full experience. The Trans-Catalina Trail is very much an entry-level trail. It is kind of like glamping. You've got bathrooms and fire pits and firewood at each campsite. So that's really nice. Which campsite did you enjoy the most?
Definitely the beach. I can't remember the name of it right now. The beach campsite. Yeah. Not Parsons. So actually that section of the trail was closed.
Oh.
So you couldn't camp there. You could only hike out and back to Parsons because there had been some flooding. And so the end of the trail, the camping spots were actually closed.
Oh, so are you talking about 2 harbors then?
So I think Little Harbor.
Oh, Little Harbor, yeah. I mean, there's multiple campsites by the beach. Little Harbor is a fantastic spot. Yes.
Yeah, I really liked that one.
Okay. Now you mentioned the West Coast Trail in June. West Coast Trail, I believe, is in Canada, right? Is it on Vancouver Island?
Vancouver Island.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's a bit more challenging than the Trans-Catalina Trail.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know about the West Coast Trail is about 50 miles and it skirts kind of the southern coastline of Vancouver Island in Canada, which is on the west coast of British Columbia. And it is a really interesting trail. I call it a backpacker obstacle course because it has about 100 ladders that you have to climb. It has bridges. It has the trail, even when there is trail, is more like a jumble of roots that you have to kind of climb over. And then there's about 20 to 35 kilometers of beach walking, which can be pretty miserable when you're walking in sand. And then there's the whole last section, which is over really big boulders and along the coastline on these like tidal areas, which are underwater at certain times of the day. So you have to read the tide charts every day. And then you have these just really big pushes up ladders and things like that challenge you. There's also cable cars that you have to go across. Luckily, when I went, there was a drought basically. And as to the cable cars, you didn't have to go across because you could walk across the river because it was so dry.
Sounds like a Spartan race.
It's basically a Spartan race with your 40-pound pack.
Nice. All right.
But I will say there is one luxurious item on the West Coast Trail, and that is on day 3, there is a First Nations owned crab shack that's like floats on a dock in this one river that you cross on a ferry. And you can get fresh crab, fresh haddock, salmon, lingcod, and that was great.
Yeah, fish tacos.
No fish tacos, but like you can get basically fresh crab or like just whatever the fish is with a baked potato.
With the baked potato. Wow, they pull those out of the river too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. Impressive.
Special way to grow them.
Now, how long did it take you to do the West Coast Trail?
It took 6 days, 5
Okay.
nights. Yeah.
And Catalina, you have to book a specific campsite each night. They have designated campgrounds where you have to do that. Same concept on the West Coast Trail, or is it more wild camping?
So the West Coast Trail is it's not wild camping. It's a permit only hike, and it is difficult. I mean I think maybe the Trans Catalina Trail might be a little bit harder to get a spot because you do have to book those specific campsites, and they're not always the ones you need or not always available. With the West Coast Trail, you basically still have to get a permit at the beginning of the year, but it's like for specific starting and ending dates. And so it's not specific campsites that correlate with that. You can kind of go to whichever ones you want. There are quite a few options along the trail. Every 4 or 5 kilometers, there's maybe a campsite here or a campsite there. Most of them are along the coastline. There are 1 or 2 that are kind of in the forest, but most of them are along the coastline, and there are definitely better ones than others, but it just kind of depends. Like you might get to one and say, oh God, this is really busy. I'm going to like kill myself and hike another 2 or 3 kilometers and see what the next one is like. But most of the people on the trail kind of have a basic idea of like, okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to try to get to this one. And then the next night I'm going to get to this one. And so everyone kind of has an idea. And then I started the trail. Oh, and you could also go multiple directions. Sorry, you can do north to south or south to north. If you wanted to do half the trail, you could also start in the middle, which you could access with a ferry from, I think, Victoria, and kind of just do one section or something like that as well. But the campsites are really beautiful. Yeah, if it's busy, you just go to a quieter one, which is what I usually did. So the first night I actually camped at a place, and just one other group came, which was 2 people. So I basically had the whole place to myself, which was really cool.
I've got to put this on my bucket list. This sounds like an outstanding hike, an outstanding experience.
It's really great. And I really lucked out again because the weather was fantastic. Now, one of the things that makes the West Coast Trail usually really difficult is that it rains a lot. Vancouver Island is a rainforest. So normally if you're doing the trail and you're planning on doing it in 6 days, you would plan to be probably in rain for at least half of it. I didn't have any rain. So yeah, it made the experience really awesome because normally you'd be like packing up your stuff in the rain or putting it up in the rain.
Right. You'd be experiencing that uncomfortable portion of hiking a lot more.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, let's take a look at maybe a hike in North America, another hike in North America. I'll let you choose. And then I also want to go overseas and hear about maybe an overseas adventure you've had.
Yeah, definitely. So another hike, I really love the Longs Peak Trail, which is only an overnight. I mean, you can actually do it as a day trip, but I definitely recommend doing it as an overnight. It's in Rocky Mountain National Park. It's the tallest mountain in Rocky Mountain National Park. I think it's around 14,000 feet. I don't remember the exact height of that, but I did that one a couple years ago. And it was one of my first solo backpacking trips. So I just totally packed my backpack wrong. I didn't even have a backpacking backpack. I had like my sleeping bag on the outside and a tent on the outside. And then, it was a whole mess, but,
what was on the inside? If those things were on the outside, what was in the inside of your bag?
Well, it wasn't a backpacking backpack. I took my camera backpack, and then it's like just not meant to hold that much stuff. So, and I had to have a bear box, and I rented one. And the ones that you get for rent are basically like the size of a trash can. They're never like small. So, you have this like giganto bear box. And then I had a huge tent at the time, which obviously now I'm like I know better now. I have much better equipment, but I think I had like just some random Marmot, like 2-person tent. It wasn't a backpacking tent, and I just had it in the tent bag. I didn't even have it in a compression bag or anything. So that was, rickety strapped to one side. And then I had a huge sleeping bag strapped to the outside. I forgot, I didn't even have room for a sleeping pad. So I didn't even have a sleeping pad, which was a very cold, uncomfortable night in my tent. And
so
because
I'm going to show off my age right now. I'm going to say a reference that you probably won't know, but it sounds like the Beverly Hillbillies in their jalopy coming to Southern California. Everything's just kind of hanging off the sides and strapped in, kind of mishmash.
Absolutely. And this video is also on my YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to go look at like the first couple of frames of that video, you can see the backpack that I had and just how, you're like, what? How ridiculous I probably looked. But it was a slow hike up to where I camped because my backpack was so heavy and I just was not, I hadn't like trained to carry that. So it was a very slow mile pace.
I'm sure you're much more sophisticated now.
Yes.
You got it all figured out.
Well, a little bit more figured out anyways.
Now with the bear canister, did you encounter any wildlife out there?
No. And even the Park Service, they said this trail, the only thing that's going to try to steal your food is marmots. Nobody sees bears up on this mountain, but you still have to have it. It's like, it's a national park. It's required. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but like, I think one of the hard things about backpacking a lot of the times is just knowing the regulations for bears, because every national park, it seems, is different. Some require a canister, some require a bag. Like Glacier is a bag, Rocky Mountain is a bear box. So it's always like, which one do I need?
Yeah, very familiar with that because the Sierras require a bear canister. Can't use a bear bag. You have to use a bear canister. And there's two sizes. There's big and there's very big.
Well, now they're making like a half size one because I just got one earlier this year and it's like, it's nice. It's only like maybe 6 inches.
Does it hold a day of food or what?
I guess it depends on how much you eat. It works for me, but.
Okay. All right. Now, how about overseas? I know you've had some adventures across the pond.
Yeah. So last summer I actually did the Dolomites. And I did an area called the Rosen Garden. There's so many places you can backpack in the Dolomites. The Rosen Garden is, in my opinion, one of the prettier areas. It also has a ton of via ferratas. So if you want to challenge yourself or you've wanted to do a via ferratas, it's a really great area because pretty much every place that you could hike, instead of hiking it, you could do a via ferrata. And it's also like a luxury backpacking. I'm saying that with quotations because it's staying in mountain huts. So you don't have to bring a tent or a sleeping bag, just a sleeping bag liner. And you can basically go from one hut that you stay at, and it includes usually breakfast and dinner. So it's called half board or full board, which includes your room and then 2 meals. And then you can hike for half the day, have lunch at a different mountain hut, and then hike more and then go spend the night at another one. So it's really, really cool. And the scenery is just really spectacular, very jagged, these big, like jagged gray. It's called dull stone is the type of rock, but basically like a type of limestone, but really, really cool. And so much variety. And I did a ton of via ferratas when I was there. One that scared me half to death, but but I made it back to my house.
Tell us about that one. Tell us about that one that scared you to death.
Yeah. So I started off that trip with doing kind of an easy via ferrata, which didn't have a ton of exposure. And you could clip into the cables, but I don't know that you necessarily needed to most of it. So that was kind of my like intro, like, oh, okay, I guess this doesn't seem that bad. So the next day I did this one up to Catenaccio del Antermois. I can't say it correctly, but it's they have like a ranking of difficulty for Via Ferratas, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not Italian, and it's like my first time reading the map. I was like, yeah, cool, highest point in the Rosengardens. I definitely want to try that. And it was right by where I was going to stay that evening. So I dropped off my bags at my mountain hut and got just my like small bag for the Via Ferrata. And right from the get-go, it was really steep, even to just get to the start of this Via Ferrata, where I would have to then, what I thought, clip into some cables. So I get to the beginning of it and I'm already like, my God, the exposure is like crazy. And there's no cables yet because you're not even really to the beginning of this Via Ferrata. So I look for where the trail is like arrows this way. I'm like, okay. And I'm by myself, by the way. So no friends. It's also my birthday. So I go to start the trail and immediately see that where there were supposed to be cables, there's no cables. And it's basically like a ledge with a drop off to the left. And you had to go over this kind of sheer section with the very steep drop off to the left to be able to kind of get into this next crux. And then there's like rocks on both sides. And I was like, I just couldn't even get started. I just couldn't do it. And I stood there for a while and was like, I just was so scared because I saw the drop off and I was like, there used to be cables there. The cables are gone. Like, it was just one of those moments where my fear was like overwhelming me. So I like went back to like the top of this section right by where the trail starts and just sat there for a while trying to like either talk myself into it or talk myself out of it. And, when you have both sides, it's like, oh, well, I should do it. And then you're like, oh, maybe I should just go back to the hut and have a cake and a glass of wine, and then it's like, oh, you're only going to be here once. You never know. It's just like the devil on both sides. And then finally this gentleman came up and this like Italian guy. And I was like, oh, hey, are you doing the Via Ferrata? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, do you mind if I follow you? And he's like, no, it's fine. So I followed this guy up, and that like gave me the courage that I needed, I guess, for just to see somebody else going over this section that I thought was really scary. And so I made it over that, and I was just thinking, oh, great, there's going to be something we can clip into right after this. Still no cables, no chains, nothing for like a good another 500 feet of this beginning of this climb. And it's way more exposure than the first trail that I did on the Via Ferratas. So I'm like still thinking, oh my God. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I can't go back because that section in the beginning would be even more terrifying going down. So I have to keep going. And luckily this guy, he didn't really speak English, which was fine, but he was really nice. And he would look back and be like, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm fine. And then finally we get to an area where you could clip in, but the trail continued up all these really crazy sections. And there were many sections with no cables, nowhere to clip in, where you're just like, okay, don't look down, look forward, look where you're going. And that's it. And then at the top of this trail is a ridge line where there's no cables, there's no chains, and it's probably 200 feet long. And it's literally just like a pencil thin rock ledge with thousands of feet down on both sides. And it was really scary, but I made it across and got to that, like they have crosses at the top of all the mountains. And I was just like, oh my God.
Holy smokes. I was going to ask, did you clip into the guy's belt? The guy that you're following, I would have clipped in.
I should have.
Now, I listened to that whole story. I didn't want to interrupt because you're doing such a great job of putting me in the moment there. But you have to explain to us, what is a Via Ferrata?
Okay, so a via ferrata is it's basically like a hiking trail mixed with a rock climbing route, would be the best way to explain it. So it's places that are really steep, usually have quite a bit of exposure, and there are either like metal stakes drilled into the rock or series of cables or chains that you then wear a rock climbing harness. Basically, it has different lanyards on it, and you have two lanyards with carabiners basically on the ends, and you're able to always have one clipped into a cable or chain, and you ascend the mountain in this way, kind of scrambling up. There are also areas where there might be bolts put into the mountainside, and you're actually scaling like a vertical cliff, putting your feet on the bolts and then clipping into other bolts or cables as you kind of like walk up the vertical face of a mountain.
Now, the start of your Dolomite story sounded pretty glampy. You talk about huts and breakfast and all this good stuff. That part does not sound too glampy. That sounds pretty terrifying.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's one of the cool things about the Dolomites too, is that you can choose to kind of hike. So there's all this variety, right? There's these trails that go on the outside of the mountain range, which I would say are the more like touristed routes. So those are like, you've got people of all ages, a lot of like older clientele as well, because it's rather expensive, obviously, to get to Europe, that are doing kind of these exterior mountain hikes that are relatively flat and meandering and go through meadows and very beautiful scenery. And then you have kind of the interior mountain hikes, which are going to be up a lot of mountain passes. And when I say mountain passes, they are seriously steep, like steeper than I've ever experienced anywhere, these mountain passes. And you're going up over one, down another one, and up over another one. So you can choose to do that, or you can choose to do these via ferratas, or a combination of these mountain passes and the via ferratas, getting you from peak to peak, basically. But in the via ferrata sense, you're going basically, on the edge of the peak to get to the top of the peak, and then back down the other cliff side.
Wow. And yeah, there's nothing quite like the feeling of, I can't turn back because where I just came from is worse than what's in front of me. You're kind of forced to keep just forging ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even yesterday I hiked up to this kiva in Canyonlands, and it was really steep. It was on like an old Native American footpath, and I got to the top and was like, oh God, I have to go down that. That's terrifying.
Did you go down forward or go down backwards?
Kind of like a combo of, sliding / yeah.
Keep that center of gravity close to the ground.
Yes. And I will say, like, going back to Long's Peak in Colorado, the end of that trail is up, like, I felt like this is rock climbing. So then, yeah, going down that was terrifying because it's a ledge that is 2,000, 3,000 feet down. If you got out of control or it was slippery, like you could easily just fall off and die. So going down that one was pretty scary as well. I think it was scarier going down than going up. But yeah, that was definitely like you're on your butt and you're like, find a foothold here, and don't slip and do not go too fast.
Yeah, we talked earlier about letting gravity do its job, but there are some instances where you don't want gravity to do its job completely.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah. All right. Hey, what is the next adventure for Alice?
Well, I am hiking Kings Peak not tomorrow, 2 days from now, here in Utah. It's the tallest mountain in Utah. And then after that, I'm actually going to Jordan and to Lebanon. I'll be doing some hiking in both countries, and some biking as well, and some obviously exploring some of the cultural archaeological sites as well.
How exciting! Now, my wife, Mrs. Doc, she is Lebanese, and she has family in Lebanon. And I know that
Oh, really?
it is a bit dicey there right now. What are you expecting?
Yeah, so I'm actually going with a woman that she invited me. She owns a tour company called Discovery Beyond Borders. She lives in Beirut, so she'll be showing me the countryside, and we'll be doing a lot more of the homestays, hiking, kind of the more natural areas, not within the city. I mean, we'll do a little bit in Beirut probably, but kind of seeing kind of the untouched things that you're definitely not going to read about in any of the guidebooks. And we'll be staying far away from the border with Israel because that's kind of the more dicey area, definitely in Lebanon.
No, that's right. And is Petra, is that in Jordan?
That is, yeah, I'll be going there.
Are you going there?
Yeah, I'll be hiking through Petra.
I have seen so many pictures of that place, and I've talked to people who have done it, and it sounds incredible.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and we'll hopefully do like the Dead Sea and the Red Sea as well after I do Petra and Amman and kind of the more touristy areas too.
Wow, fantastic! So excited for you. Hey, Alice, you know where we are right now?
We're at the section where I have to give some advice.
Hiking hacks.
You're good, Alice. You're good. You knew where we were. Yes, it's time for hiking hacks, where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. You have been dropping trail wisdom left and right throughout the episode, but you still are on the hook for one right now. So what do you have for us? I hope you saved one.
Okay, well, I would say one of my hiking hacks is definitely, instead of using a bear bag, if it's a bear bag place, use a dry bag. You don't need to spend a ton of money on a Ursa bag or anything like that. A dry bag works just as well, and I'm sure everyone has one laying around. Another thing is, if you've ever had trouble putting your tent stakes in, if you go to the hardware store and you buy like the little plastic caps, I think they're for like PVC pipe, you can carry one and just put it on the end of your tent stake and you can step on it with your shoe. It's a lot easier.
Now, isn't the Ursa bag designed to keep the bear from getting into the food?
Yeah, but the thing is, if you have to hang the food, a bear's not going to get it anyways. It doesn't matter if it's an Ursa sack or a dry bag, which they're basically the same thing. I think Ursa bag is just like an expensive material.
Okay.
It's the same. All
right. Well, we will have to hear from our listeners on that one. I don't have any experience with Ursa bags. It's only bear canisters out here in the Southwest. But I thought that they were like tougher for the bears to get into.
Yeah, but if a bear gets if it gets its hands on your hanging food, you've hung the food wrong.
Okay.
I mean, West Coast Trail, you have to hang. It's like a bear bag scenario. Mm-hmm. I just used a dry bag. I mean, there's no reason to go spend $100 on some other kind of bag, which it's really the same.
Now, you mentioned the wrong way to hang your bear bag. What is the right way? What's the wrong way?
Well, I will say, I watched this girl on YouTube. I'm not going to name any names. She was like, "Oh, this is how you hang your food bag." And she literally just like tied it around the tree and it was on the tree trunk. And I was like, what is that? So that one really made me laugh. Because I was like, wow, that's exactly how you should hang it if you want the bear to get your food, or a raccoon or anything else. Obviously, I think some people have different ideas on how you should hang your food. For me, if I have a tree branch, hang it, throw it out as far away from the tree trunk as you can, and then tie it off on a diagonal. That's what I do. Luckily, there's so many parks here in the United States, like Glacier. They usually have poles or bars where you can hang it, and it makes it pretty easy.
But whatever you do, don't just tie it around the base of the tree.
Exactly. And don't leave it in your tent.
Both great tips. Love it. Love it. Okay, so there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Alice. Did we find you a trail name? I was thinking maybe Mario Kart, referring to your driving skills.
I like that.
Maybe Ursa. You're talking about bareback, maybe dry bag. Dry bag is not the most flattering type of trail name, so maybe not that one. I don't know. But Alice, I want to thank you for joining us this week. How can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates about your latest adventures, your upcoming adventures in Jordan and Lebanon?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If you want to follow along, you can follow me on YouTube at Alice Ford Adventures, or over on Instagram at Alice's Adventures on Earth. And I also have a blog that matches that, where I post a lot of my stories from my hikes and travels around the world as well.
Okay. Remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. No TikTok, Alice?
Oh, I have a TikTok, but
okay.
It's the same. Alice's Adventures on Earth.
Okay. And if you
want to follow me there, I only have 600 followers on TikTok, so I'm still figuring it out.
What are your followers on the other platforms? How many?
27,000 on Instagram and 42,000 on YouTube.
Okay, impressive. But only 600 plus on TikTok. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you have comments or clips you want to share with me, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail, and when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, Ursa, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. See, I'm just trying out these names to see how it sounds, see how it feels. This could be a book or a movie or a documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. What do you have?
Ooh. Okay, I really like this book, Darklands. It's about a journalist who basically traveled to some of the most dangerous countries in the world, and it's kind of his firsthand tales of all these places. I mean, some of them you've probably never even heard of, but it's really interesting. He goes to like Venezuela, he goes to Papua New Guinea, and some countries in Africa and the Middle East. And if you're looking for something kind of interesting to read, I recommend it.
Okay. Nonfiction, obviously?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right.
What have we not asked you?
That's my daughter, by the way, half calf. She was born in Southern California. She's not English or Australian or whatever that accent is supposed to be. But she likes to put on airs occasionally. This last segment is called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss tonight?
I don't know.
Do we know all there is to know about Alice now?
Definitely not. But what is there to share? Oh my goodness. So many things, I'm sure.
So many things. Okay, well, there's so many things. You got to come back on and do another episode with us, and we'll get into some more about Alice.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd love to be back.
Okay. All right. Hey, we are finished. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Wish you the very best in your next adventures overseas. And like I said, I hope you come back and share some more stories with us. As we close up today, any shout outs to friends and family?
Shout out to Mad Max. I hope your tire feels better tomorrow.
Get that lug nut off. All right. Well, hey, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if the Italian guy you're following on the Via Ferrata has left you in the dust. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.